Hey, welcome back. In the previous episode, we explored advanced Postgres functions. Today, we'll focus on enhancing Northwind-Lite and applying best practices. Everything from optional schema improvements to indexes, constraints, and cloud-friendly tips. These small adjustments can make your database more robust, efficient, and maintainable. Well, let's jump over to our console and back to our SQL editor. And first, we'll add a few optional columns to make our database more realistic. So let's type in our SQL commands to alter our tables. Let's expand the window so we can see the code. First, we'll alter the customers table, then the employees table, and then followed by the products table. So we're basically just adding a couple of columns in each table. In customers table, we'll add a phone and a region. And then in the employees table, we'll add a reports to column. And then in the products table, we'll add a units in stock column. Again, these are optional fields just to improve the realism of our database. Reports to allows hierarchy reporting for employees. Units in stock, often used in real applications. And those two columns, phone and region, optional columns, but you often see those in real applications. Okay, and then we'll run this, and it ran successfully. Now let's add some indexes to improve performance. So let's clear our screen here. Then we'll add code here to create some indexes on the orders table, order items, and employees table. Again, indexes improve query performance. In a cloud database like Neon, they help when working with joins or filtering large data sets. For our small demo, the effect is minimal, but it's good practice for large deployments. Okay, we'll click on the Run button to create those indexes. Next, we'll add constraints and defaults. So let's clear our screen and then type our constraint code. Constraints prevent bad data even when multiple users interact with the cloud database. Defaults simplify inserts when values are often repeated. As you can see here, this constraint ensures unit price greater than 0 in products. And in this constraint, it ensures orders item quantities greater than 0. And in this one, it makes sure that the default country for orders is always USA. Now let's create several views for simplifying queries. Expand our window so we can see the code of the view. Views basically simplify reporting. you can query these like tables pretty much, like select star on the from the view's name. They encapsulate complex joins and aggregations, perfect for dashboards or external tools. For example, here's a view for orders with totals. And here's another one, view for employee sales summary. So let's create those two views by clicking on the run button. And we've created two views. Again, you can query these views like tables. For example, all you need is the view name. For example, here's our view that we created here. Here's the name. If we were to query this view, we can do a select statement on the view name and then hit run to get the result of the query as a result of the view. Now let's take a look at some tips and best practices for our database. Now, these tips and best practices apply to not just Neon, but for other database cloud providers as well. And the functionalities behind them are the same or similar. First, we'll look at branches. So if we go to Neon's branches item here, you can see we currently have one branch, and that's our production branch. And we can create up to 10 branches. A branch is a copy on write version of your database at a point in time. You can start from another branch, usually the main branch, which is in this case we have our production branch here. And initially they share the same storage, and then the changes are isolated. And they usually have its own connection string. Think of it as the same data but different reality. So why does branches exist? Again, branches are used to create test copies of your database without affecting production data. So let's try to create a new branch. So to create a new branch, we can give it a name. We'll call it stage. Since we already have a production branch, let's call this one stage. And we'll keep the default settings here, current data. And we'll click create. And as you can see, it creates a connection string, a new connection string for the new branch. And there are some default items here, such as connection pooling. We'll keep those. And then we'll close this. And then now we have two branches. If we go back to branches, we'll see that we have a stage branch. And its parent branch is the production branch. And as we can go into that and we can take a look at its connect string. As you probably see, it'll be different than the one from the production one. So this is pretty much the same data, but different reality, and you can use it as if you were using the production branch for staging, as an example. Make changes into it and then update to it for the production branch. Another best practice is the use of pooling, connection pools. All right, if we were to go back to our dashboard, and we're back here, and if we go to our connect string, that's how we connect to our database here. We want to make sure we leverage the cloud provider's serverless connection pooling to avoid overloading our cloud database. Postgres connections are expensive. Each connection equals memory plus CPU. Postgres doesn't scale to thousands of concurrent connections. Serverless apps can easily open hundreds or thousands of connections in seconds, and this usually results in too many connections, which ends up with the database, having failovers. The cloud provider's pooler reuses a small number of real DB connections, multiplexes many apps requests over them, and scales them automatically. So to avoid having any problem with this, you should allow your cloud provider to manage connections for you. So to do this in Neon as an example, you'll set this connection pooling parameter here to true, so that you can avoid having direct pooling and let the cloud providers do it serverlessly safe for you. Another best practice is the backup and restore functionalities. With the backup and restore, you can instantly restore a branch from a point in time or a snapshot and manage your backup schedule. So that's a good feature to use continuously in your cloud database. Another one is monitoring, and this is where you can get Neon, for example, provides query stats and logs, perfect for tracking long-running queries or function performances. In summary, some tips and best practices should include branching, using the cloud provider's branching capabilities to create test copies of your database without affecting production data. You should also consider connection pools to leverage serverless connection pooling to avoid overloading your cloud database. Also, backups, very important. Even on the free tier, regularly export data or use built-in snapshots for safety. And lastly, monitoring. You can use the cloud provider's capability, and they usually provide query stats and logs, perfect for tracking long-running queries or function performances. That's it for episode 6 in the Northwind-Lite series. Let's do a quick recap. We created a cloud-hosted Postgres database, built a relational schema with keys, constraints, and indexes, populated with realistic seed data, and wrote both basic and advanced functions for reporting and analytics. We also added optional enhancements and applied best practices for cloud deployment. At this point, your Northwind-Lite database is fully functional, cloud ready, and perfect for demos, tutorials, or small projects. Now, if you're wondering how this fits into a real application, this is where the next series come in. In my back-end RESTful API series, we use this exact Postgres database with Python and FastAPI to build a production-style API connecting real endpoints to real data. If you want to see how this database gets used from an actual backend, check out that series next. I'll link it in the description. Thanks for following along and keep experimenting with SQL functions, reporting, and cloud workflows. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next videos.